The Cheltenham Festival is just days away, and we at Star Sports have a full case of festival fever. So I'm very pleased to be joined by Jordan Cox from the trading room to discuss some of our thinking ahead of next week and all the good stuff we can look forward to. So, with that in mind, Jordan, thanks for giving me some of your time today. I know it's manic, absolutely manic at Star Towers. What are the good things punters can expect for the next week? I'm sure we'll have some goodies to surprise you with, but where are we at the moment?
Yeah, so where we're at the moment is, we're getting everything in motion. We're going through quite an eventful, chaotic declaration stage. Obviously there's still a lot of unknowns with the Lossy Mouth, Factor File, Gaelic Warrior, all those sort of things going on. We did get an answer yesterday in regards to Mighty Park, who will be running in the Supreme. But around all this chaos and carnage, we're still boosting several horses on a daily basis. That can all be checked out on our website. And then other than that, yeah, we're just preparing promos and bits and bobs.
Lovely stuff. So every bookie will have a different sort of position, but with our anti-post markets, what results are we hoping for at this stage of the next week?
Yeah, so some of our sort of worst results at this stage. My Daddy Paddy and the Supreme is by far our worst result. So we have been pushing out a little bit on Old Park Star, see if we can get that beat. On paper, it actually looks quite a competitive Supreme. Comparative to recent years. My Daddy Paddy obviously got beat last time. We had laid him before the run at Aintree, but subsequently the money has still come back in.
What price actually do you reckon, if you had to guess, Old Park Star might go off? There was a long period where it looked as if he might be one of the festival's shortest price favourites, and there's been a bit of opposition. The race is shaping up to be quite strong. At the moment, where are we with Old Park Star? What price do you think we might get that first race?
Yeah, at the moment we're 2-1, which is pretty general across the industry. Uh, will he drift out on the day? There's potentially every chance. It is that first race of the festival, and a lot of people do try to push out the Favs in the Supreme. If you're going to lose your money, you might as well do it in the first race because you've got another 27 races to get it back. So in our game, we don't always try and lay the favourites, but we do also see what comes our way, and I'm pretty sure that he is going to be a very strong favourite. JP moving into the race is obviously quite an interesting angle now. But let's just see where we are after the 48-hour declaration stage, because there's still a few other Mullins horses in here that all talk the talk as well, which could reroute to the Turners, and obviously that would change the market quite a bit.
Continuing with day one, we've got a very interesting article and a really interesting champion hurdle, certainly in betting terms. What's the picture for us at the moment in those two races?
Yeah, look, I would say that we probably got quite lucky with the news around Constitution Hill. We had laid him quite a fair bit. He's obviously going to go and have a hopefully a very fruitful flat campaign now. Looking at the Arkle, the one we keep laying is Kopek de Board. He's only had the one run over fences. It's quite interesting, but the money does still seem to be coming for him. He's shortened up to about a 6-4 favourite now with us. Lulamba on the drift. I could see there being a bit of money for Lulamba on the day, but let's just see in regards to that one. But yeah, Kopek is a pretty nasty anti-post result for us at the moment.
On a champion, this has been a quite wild anti-post market. The rumor seems to be that Lossiemouth could take a chance, and a new lion currently favourite. What's your view on the champion at the moment? What's the anti-post picture looking like? Because this could really, really change over the weekend.
Yeah, I generally have the feeling that this race could again be primed for an upset. It's just, turned into that sort of race in recent years. And I feel like now, there's some doubts around the new Lion. Lottie Mouse going to come into here potentially. That if you look at the exchanges, it seems to be heading that way. In the past 24 hours, she has shortened up for the champion hurdle, and taken quite a drift in the mares. But as with the like the declaration chaos, it's yo-yo season, so let's just see where that ends up. But yeah, it could be primed for one of the outsiders to come in here. Poneros has been quite interesting, for Willie Mullins and Tony Bloom. There's also Alexi for the Tizzards, all getting some sort of each way support at the moment.
Okay, okay. Tuesday again, shape it to be a really interesting day. In general, actually, this Cheltenham Festival looks possibly a little bit different from previous years where there aren't a flood of odds-on shots. How has that changed in general the business so far leading up to this point?
Do you know what? It's actually been, we've seen a much bigger spread of business. I think at this stage, most bookmakers would be looking at the multiples that have racked up over the winter. But for us, there's not really been any obvious short ones. Only until recently there were no odds-on shots, and now obviously you're in a position where Factor File and Majbra potentially look like going off odds-on. So the multiples are only sort of starting to come in now, but no one's really got the day one fourfold, all those sort of things that you may get frightened about in the trading room, but it doesn't appear to be that at this stage. And the only reflective of looking at the Gold Cup market, there's 5-1 the field there. I certainly can't remember that in recent years anyway. And because of that, we've laid several horses in there. It's looking a very busy book. Everyone wants a bit of everything in there. We've laid the Haiti Colors, Django Bay, Gaelic Warrior, even Envoy Allen. He's kind of gone a little bit under the radar actually. I know he's a 12-year-old, but he's quite a big price now. Fairly interesting. So there's lots of narratives and angles in the Gold Cup, and it's sort of reflective of that across the whole of the meeting, really.
Speaking of the whole of the meeting, how are Wednesday and Thursday looking? At this point in time, we are speaking in the middle of a hectic declarations process, so some of these races will really change, but it's looking pretty open and pretty competitive. And obviously, we had earlier in the week the very big and unfortunate news that Marine National won't run on ground that might well have suited him. So how's Wednesday and Thursday looking for us?
Yeah, look, it's been fairly sort of quiet in the champion chase market, actually. We hadn't really laid much of Marine National or haven't really laid much of Majborough either. Yeah, so if you want to know the favourite in the bumper, we've laid that for a little bit. Love Sign Danu. Looks obvious to be Patrick's ride at this stage, but obviously not a gimme. Mullins does have a few in there. Final Demand has been of interest, despite getting beat at the DRF. He is now looking sort of around the 7-2 mark. Still interesting for punters there. They haven't given up the faith. If you were to look at sort of the Thursday races, Cabral de Matan, he's been such an interesting horse this season. Moved to the Skeltons. He obviously shortened up a fair bit for the stayers on the back of his performance at Cheltenham New Year's Day. But since Dan Skelton came out and said that he probably wasn't going to be going to Cheltenham, he drifted to all sorts of fancy prices, and subsequently the U-turn has now pushed him back into 4-1. So yeah, we've laid let's say a plethora of different prices on him, and so that's looking a risky one at this stage. But when you do look across the meeting, Will, you see that actually this year, and it's no secret now, but GB are kind of in a better position than they were going into the festival this year.
Yeah, On that, the Presby Cup, we've had a handicap the
Yeah.
last few years. We've also
Yeah.
just bet outright. That's looking a little bit more competitive on paper, isn't it? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, look, we've been umming and ahhing around the handicap line this year. Uh, I can't remember what it was last year. I believe it was potentially 9.5.
I would say 9.52.
Yeah, so this year we've gone 8.5. So Ireland minus 8.5, GB plus 8.5, 10 to 11 each of two. If you think that that's wrong, come and let us know, and we'll maybe see where we're at there. But that's what we've just settled on. We see GB as in a slightly better position this year. Mullins, of course, doesn't have let's just say the more obvious ones this year heading into the festival that he would do in recent years, particularly in the novice divisions. Usually does have quite a few short price favourites there, but not so much this year. Speaking of Mullins, Will, we decided to do a little head-to-head market with Willie Mullins versus GB. Now, in recent years, it's been quite a close market. But looking here, we've got Willie Mullins 3-1, GB 1-2, and then if you want to bet on the tie, 5-1. So we do think that Mullins and GB will have a pretty close match bet there. Again, if you think that that's quite interesting, you want to come and let us know. And then another special we're obviously very interesting top jockey market. Paul Townend, we were a shade of odds on. We've pushed him out to even money now because the money's sort of come from Mark Walsh. Obviously, this could be his final festival with JP. Quite an interesting narrative there. Let's just see if he goes out on a high. We're into 2-1 Mark Walsh. Jack Kennedy, sixes. Harry Skelton, obviously the Skeltons only had one winner last year, which is quite, incredible looking back at it. Maybe this year it'd be a totally different story. We're 8-1 Harry Skelton.
Yeah, the top jockey market is fascinating, particularly given the strength and depth that Mark Walsh has in his last season as JP's front runner. So I think that could be a right betting contest. Thank you very much for your time today. Last but never least, everybody loves to hear about us suffering a bit of pain. So what are the three worst results at the time of speaking for next week?
So that would be My Daddy Paddy. That would be Supremely West in the Pertemps, and Uber Tuber in
Mm,
the Albert Bartlett. So Ollie
okay.
Murphy's interesting outsider for you there to have a look at.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Go well next week. And thank
Thanks,
you
Will.
very much, everybody, for watching and listening. For more of all the good Cheltenham Festival content, of course, please stick with Star Sports. We'll have lots on the website, on our Twitter feeds, and everywhere else you can look.